The keys hit the table with a metallic scrape, sliding past my outstretched hand toward my brother's waiting palm. My father's wedding ring clinked against the wood as he deliberately avoided my eyes. The sound echoed in my ears like a gavel. "You're a failure. Just a burden we won't carry anymore. Get out." My mother's voice sliced through the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd scrubbed countertops, prepared holiday meals, and silently endured their criticism for years. Her words vibrated through my chest like physical blows, each syllable distinct and precise. I felt the blood drain from my face as I watched Tyler's fingers close around those keys to our family business, to the second house my grandfather built with his own hands. The air in the room seemed to crystallize around us, turning each breath shallow and painful. I noticed my reflection in the polished steel refrigerator, distorted, diminished, exactly as they'd always seen me. "My name is Julia. I'm 36 and a former family caretaker. This is the story of how I built an empire from the ashes they left me in." I didn't scream. Didn't beg. Just watched as my mother slid a plastic bag with my name scrawled across it, filled with old mail and leftover belongings, toward me across the counter. The same counter where I'd prepared their meals every Sunday for the past decade. "The real estate attorney transferred everything this morning," my father muttered to Tyler, as if I weren't standing 3 feet away. "The business account passwords are in the envelope." 10 years of unpaid weekends at the family shop. Countless nights balancing their books while Tyler partied through his 20s. The business I'd practically managed since I was 22, gone with a signature, handed to someone who'd never even learned how to run the register. I took only what fit in my car that night. No goodbye. No explanation needed. Just left. For 2 years, I disappeared from their lives. No calls. No holiday appearances. No responses to their occasional voicemails that arrived with clockwork precision every few months, each one dripping with subtle guilt but never an apology. "Julia, it's Mom. Just checking in. We haven't heard from you in a while. Tyler's doing well with the business. You should see the changes he's made." Delete. "It's Dad. Mother's Day is coming up. Your mother mentioned you. Call us back." Delete. "Julia, it's Mom again. The family portrait is next month. We'd like you there. Call us." Delete. Instead of returning to their orbit, I channeled my energy elsewhere. With my meager savings, the money they never knew I had, I purchased a small plot of land 40 miles away. I secured 2 jobs, bookkeeping for a local greenhouse during days and waiting tables at night. Every insult they'd ever hurled became fuel. Too quiet, not ambitious enough, always in the background. I poured these words into blueprints, bricks, and borrowed time. I lived in a trailer on my land for 18 months while building began. Every spare dollar went into construction. Every free hour spent learning, planning, growing. The stone gate came first, then the foundation, the custom glass entryway I designed myself, solar panels that local news featured in a small business highlight. The transformation was nearly complete when my phone lit up with a number I'd never saved but instantly recognized. "Dad." My brother's voice exploded through the speaker, breathless and frantic. "You need to see this place. She built a whole life without us." I ended the call without speaking, but something shifted in my chest. Not satisfaction, exactly, something quieter but more certain. They would come now. Curiosity always follows cruelty, especially when the person you discarded starts glowing in a place you can't reach. 2 days later, I spotted my father's Mercedes crawling past my fence line. He didn't stop, just slowed enough to stare. I stood on my porch, ceramic mug of tea warming my palms, neither waving nor acknowledging him, simply existing, which in their world was already too much. I watched his car disappear around the bend, and something in me, something I hadn't realized was still waiting, finally exhaled. That night, an email notification pierced the darkness of my bedroom. From Patricia Reed. Subject: "We should talk. Julia, we didn't mean for things to get so distant. We were just trying to do what was best for everyone. Tyler needed help starting out. You seemed fine on your own. Let's reconnect. Maybe we can come see the house sometime. No apology. No ownership. Just revision of a history I'd lived through. They were trying to write themselves into Act 2 of a story they'd abandoned at Chapter 1. I didn't reply, but I forwarded the email to myself with the subject line, "When they pretend they didn't push you out." Then I drove into town and purchased paint supplies, not for interior walls, but for the exterior wall facing the road. I began designing a mural that would speak louder than any response I could write. I spent 3 weeks on it, working during sunrise hours when the light was gentle and the world was quiet. A large, sweeping image formed. A young woman planting seeds while faceless figures tossed stones behind her back. Above it, in gold lettering that caught the morning sun, watered by rejection. Rooted in self. It was visible from the main road, impossible to miss when driving past. Not angry, not bitter, just undeniably true. They arrived unannounced on a Saturday afternoon as I knelt in the front garden beds, planting rows of lavender. The crunch of tires on gravel announced them before the car door slammed. My father emerged first, then my mother, teetering on heels too sharp for the stone path, her ankles wobbling with each step. They didn't knock. They stood at the edge of my porch like tourists at a monument they'd never funded. My mother's eyes scanned the wooden beams, the iron lanterns, the hand-carved door. Her fingers clutched her purse strap so tightly her knuckles whitened. "You did all this yourself?" The question hung between us, her tone suggesting I'd somehow stolen rather than created. I stood slowly, wiping soil from my gloves onto my jeans. The silence stretched between us like copper wire, humming with unspoken words. I said nothing, just maintained eye contact with them both, feeling my heartbeat remain steady for the first time in their presence. My father cleared his throat. "You should have told us you were doing so well." I tilted my head slightly. "You told me I was a burden. I assumed my silence would be a relief." My mother flinched, not from guilt, but from being quoted. "We were under stress," she muttered. "Tyler was going through a lot. We didn't think you'd thrive." I believe the word you used was survive. She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to the mural, now complete and gleaming in the afternoon sun. Her lips parted slightly, then pressed together. "I don't need you to like it," I said quietly. "I didn't build this for applause." They left without seeing the inside. No hugs, no tears, no false promises, just 2 shrinking figures retreating down my driveway and a field of young lavender standing witness. Days passed, then a week. The silence between us wasn't cold anymore, it was earned. Then, without warning, a text message appeared from my brother. A photo, the family business with windows boarded up, a crooked for-lease sign stuck in the dirt. His caption read, "Hope your little garden's worth more than our legacy." Our legacy? The same legacy I was told I wasn't good enough to touch? The business I'd cleaned after school, taken inventory for, worked weekends in, unpaid? Tyler had run it into the ground, hired friends instead of qualified staff, ignored the books, refused advice from vendors I'd built relationships with for years. He didn't build it, so he didn't know how to carry it. And now he was furious that I hadn't crumbled in his shadow. I didn't respond, but I printed the photo and taped it inside my office cabinet, not out of pettiness, but as a reminder that not all gifts are blessings, and not all exclusions are losses. The following morning, I opened the envelope that had been sitting on my desk for months, the deed to my land, fully paid. No loans, no cosigners, just my name. I traced my finger over the embossed seal, feeling the texture of ownership, not just of land, but of story. Of self. They had given Tyler walls. They had given me air. He had suffocated in his inheritance. I had learned to breathe on my own. The story might have ended there, but people like them don't leave loose ends. Another email arrived from my mother, this time with a photo attachment. Her and Tyler at a charity gala, dressed elegantly, her caption reading simply, "Still standing. Family always finds its way." No greeting, no context, just a thinly veiled reminder that they still had each other. That the two of them remained family while I existed outside that circle. Still standing. I stared at that phrase longer than I should have, because standing and growing aren't the same thing. And roots once ignored don't return to the soil that starved them. I drafted a post of my own that evening, something I rarely did. A photo of the greenhouse I'd completed that week, my hands covered in soil, seedlings emerging in neat rows. My caption read, "Some of us weren't handed anything, so we built everything we needed by hand." In silence. The response was immediate. Hundreds of shares, messages from former classmates, neighbors, even the journalist who'd covered my solar installation. I needed to see this today. You're doing more than growing, you're thriving. I hadn't sought validation, but for once, I felt seen on my own terms. The metrics didn't matter, the resonance did. That evening, my neighbor Eleanor brought over fresh bread and stopped to examine the mural. "What inspired this?" she asked, head tilted toward the painted woman sowing seeds. I paused, then answered honestly, "Family. And what blooms after them?" She nodded like she understood. And I think she did, because sometimes family builds your foundation, and sometimes they're just the fire that teaches you how to rebuild. Either way, you grow. Autumn arrived with amber leaves and early sunsets. I spent most evenings on the porch now, watching the lavender fields sway in the twilight. That's when the letter came, not an email, not a text, but a handwritten letter with my name carefully penned on the envelope. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. "Julia. I drove past again last week. I don't think you saw me. The place looks beautiful. You did more with your piece of land than I ever did with the whole business. I still don't know how to talk to you. I don't know how to undo the way we hurt you. But I wanted to say I see it now. We got it wrong. I hope you're happy. Dad." There was no manipulation, no request, just words, late, but almost honest. I didn't cry. I didn't write back. But I folded the letter and placed it inside the same folder that held my property deed. Not as a keepsake, but as a record. Proof that people can change their words, even if they never change their choices. That night, I sat under string lights in my garden, watching shadows dance across the mural. My land was quiet, but my heart wasn't empty. All of this had taught me that home isn't inherited, it's claimed, built with hands no one believed in, protected by boundaries no one respected, and filled with love that doesn't ask for proof. They may have given Tyler the family title, but I had made something untouchable. Winter brought the silence of snow. Not the kind I feared anymore, but the kind I chose. My father's letter was the last communication I received from any of them. No follow-ups, no visits, no staged family interventions. They had said their piece, and I had heard it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the table that taught you hunger. Instead, I expanded. The greenhouse doubled in size, and I began hosting weekend workshops for women in the community, quiet builders, late bloomers, daughters who had been told to settle for silence. During one session, as we planted spring bulbs, a woman named Rachel lingered behind after the others had left. "I know you don't talk much about your past," she said softly, "but did you build all this because of them?" I looked up from the seedling in my hands, soil under my fingernails. I smiled, not sad, not bitter, just honest. "No," I replied. "I built it because of me. They were just the reason I had to start from scratch." She nodded, understanding perhaps too well. Later that evening, I stood before the mural again. I'd added to it the previous week, a small detail most wouldn't notice, a second figure standing beside the woman planting seeds. Not helping her, not handing her tools, just witnessing, letting her bloom on her own terms. It represented something I hadn't realized I'd found: witnesses, not saviors. People who saw me as I was, not as I failed to be. Family, it turns out, isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the ones who show up after the fire and sit beside the ash without asking you to pretend it never burned. Spring returned like a soft exhale. My lavender field stretched wider now, buzzing with bees, bending with wind. The greenhouse thrived, and so did I. One final delivery arrived in my mailbox that May, a legal notice. Tyler had defaulted on the business loan. They had used the family home as collateral. It was gone. The empire they'd given him had crumbled. The inheritance they'd thought was legacy had become debt. For a moment, I wondered if I should feel something, vindication, perhaps, or pity. But all I felt was distance, like watching the ending of a movie I'd walked out of years ago. A week later, a regional magazine asked to feature my property, the lavender, the murals, the workshops that now had a waiting list. They titled the piece From Discarded to Rooted, a woman who built backward and bloomed anyway. I didn't post it online. Didn't send it to my family. Didn't need to. My revenge was never meant to be loud. It was always this, living well without them. That weekend, a little girl from a workshop brought me a drawing, stick figures standing in front of a purple field. One had curly hair and gardening gloves. Below it, in crooked letters, she'd written, "I want to grow up just like you. The kind of lady who makes things stay alive." I hung it beside the mural because sometimes the real legacy isn't in what you're given, it's in what you plant, what you protect, and what grows because you refuse to stay buried.